It is, beyond question, a lot of fun to shit on the Dallas Cowboys. Because they are the NFL's version of John Cena. They are pushed and forced to the detriment of everybody else, whether they deserve that fucking spot or they don't. Oh, they draw in the numbers. You never put another team in that spot consistently enough to be able to prove otherwise. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy. You only put one team in that spot. Of course, they're going to be the only team that can do it because they're the only team that gets a fucking chance. But the Cowboys have a big fan base, and they are passionate about their team. And it is always good to kind of tweak them to remind them, as much as they love to talk about the Cowboys, it is always fun to ask them, how about the Cowboys? And when you realize that the Chicago Bears have been more recently to an NFC Championship game, and that was with bitch-ass, pussy-ass Jay Cutler as the starting quarterback, and have been to a Super Bowl more recently with Saxy Raxy Grossman as their starting quarterback, you know, you realize just how much the Dallas Cowboys are turning into a fucking Texas version of the Chicago Bears. You guys are talking about championships that were won 2.5+ decades ago. Sounds like a Chicago fan to me. A team that you consistently overrate and make excuses for with meh ownership. Sounds like the Bears to me, except it's the fucking Cowboys too. Now, to be fair to the Cowboys, this is not a terrible team by any stretch of the imagination. They're not even a mediocre team. This is a good team. Like when you look at this roster on both sides of the ball, I would certainly make the argument that they're in the top 5 in the league in terms of balanced and complete rosters when you look at offense and defense combined. So it puts the Cowboys in one of these spots where they don't have a ton of needs per se. They may have a couple of needs that are really obvious, but they don't have to go chasing down a bunch of needs. They're not in a desperate spot. Their number one need as a team is for Dak Prescott to not play like a punk in big spots. All the draft picks in the world aren't going to change that unless you draft another quarterback and he replaces Dak Prescott. Like, at the end of the day, let's be real. That's the only way the Cowboys get over that hump and at least get to an NFC Championship game or a Super Bowl again, is Dak Prescott's got to not play so damn small in the big game. That's it. You can talk about draft all you want, but it doesn't fucking matter if he doesn't do that. But when you look at this Cowboys team, you certainly could see, especially with the loss of Dalton Schultz, like tight end was a major need for them. And then for a team in this kind of spot, you could say, well, maybe you want to get another wide receiver, maybe draft a running back because you're going to let Zeke go. You got Tony Pollard starting. But you primarily wanted to focus on the trenches in this draft, at least early. Because when you're a team that a lot of your success in recent years has been built off of the strength of your trenches, you want to continue to invest, add strength to strength, basically. So it wasn't a huge surprise to me that when the Bills jumped the Cowboys and moved up from 27 to 25 to take Dalton Kincaid, which had to be a little heartbreaking in the Cowboys war room. I don't care how anybody tries to spin it. That had to be the target there. How could it not be? You know, the Cowboys were going to focus on the trenches. That I don't think was a tremendous surprise. I was a little surprised that Mazi Smith was the pick in round 1. I'll give you this, like he's a really high-end athlete for his size. And when you look at the interior of that defensive line, I look at him and the type of profile he brings. And as much as you like to have your interior linemen be able to generate pressure, get pressure up the middle on the quarterback, you know, that works a lot better when you have a fat ass in the middle that can take up 2 blockers. It really does. And I'm not calling Mazi Smith a fat ass, but he's a big fucking dude, right? Think of it as a more traditional nose tackle type of guy. He's going to help if he plays up to his potential. He's going to help the other linemen on that defense because he should be able to eat up some blocks. He is, however, going to need to make more plays behind the line of scrimmage, which, you know, if you were drafting in the top half of round 1, is probably a little bit bigger of a deal than when you're drafting at pick 26. Like at pick 26, if you feel like you can get a decent starter, then you're happy. They got a decent starter, in my opinion, in Mazi Smith at pick 26. However, I didn't like what they did on day 2 because I thought they reached for both of those picks. I mean, I'm not surprised they went for a tight end, but I personally, when you look at the tight end, you talk about Schoonmaker from Michigan, I thought Darnell Washington was a better prospect. I thought Brenton Strange from Penn State was a better prospect. So I do feel like they reached a little bit on a tight end. But again, I can say this was a really, really good tight end class. So maybe it wasn't so bad to reach because the fucking class was loaded. And they needed to get one here. There's no question about it. I mean, it's got to be said, though, Schoonmaker feels like a bit of a meh consolation prize for losing out on Dalton Kincaid because the Bills jumped you. And sometimes, unfortunately, that shit happens. In terms of Overshown, he feels like a bit of a project at linebacker. He certainly has starter potential, but I'm not sure how much impact you'll get out of him in 2023. Day 3 for this Cowboys team, though, I did like some of the returns that they got. I think Fehoko is going to be a rotational edge rusher pretty quickly for them. Asim Richards is a swing offensive lineman with some starter upside inside at guard. And if I'm looking at a team to draft and develop offensive linemen, you know, recent history with the Cowboys is pretty good in that sense, right? A good eye for talent on the offensive line, a good track record of developing guys and maximizing their potential. So you could certainly look at Richards being, at worst, a versatile swing backup offensive lineman for them, but a guy that could potentially start. I think Scott has some of the traits that give him a chance to stick as a zone corner. I really love the Deuce Vaughn pick in round 6. And I know you're going to get caught up on his dad works for the organization. And that's a cool story, right? And it absolutely is. It's one of those human interest stories. When you talk about 3 days in the NFL draft, you need some of those to get you through the weekend. But the reality is Deuce Vaughn in round 6 was incredibly good damn value. Like, this is a guy that could come in and stick on a roster and contribute, and could possibly contribute as a rookie, as a compliment, as a guy that can spell Tony Pollard. Because if you looked at Deuce Vaughn and you said he was 5'9", you'd be talking about him as a day 2 pick at worst. So to get him here, yes, he's undersized, but you're talking about a 6th-round pick. He was absolutely worth the swing of the bat here. Absolutely was. So it was an okay, and that's the way I'm going to put this draft for the Cowboys. It was okay. Like, I loved, as you could tell, based on what I just said, the Deuce Vaughn pick. I thought day 3 was the best day of the draft for the Cowboys. Mazi Smith was a solid but not spectacular pick on day 1, and I was a bit underwhelmed with their day 2 choices. So we'll see how this pans out for them in terms of this draft class. But again, if Dak Prescott can't play better in big spots or just play better in general, none of this shit matters for the Cowboys.